Hello everyone. Long-term viewers of the channel will know that I love nothing more than bringing you the weird and the unusual. Sometimes it's forgotten cars from decades ago, other times much more recent machinery that perhaps failed to find a market upon release. Well, that's why I'm very glad that viewer Scott has brought this to me today. It's a car that I think people had high hopes for, but ultimately failed to deliver on its promise. It's the Honda CR-Z. The CR-Z was essentially a statement car from Honda. At the time, eco cars were seen purely as something to help you achieve better CO2 figures, better MPG, and help clear your conscience. They were not seen as fun cars, and this is a car that Honda wanted to change that. It was, I believe, the first hybrid car to have a manual gearbox, and the styling very clearly apes that of the iconic CRX. And it's for that reason that my father purchased one when they came out. You see, he'd always wanted a CRX when he's younger, but could never afford one. So when he's a bit older and this came out, he thought, right, I'm gonna buy one of those. Unfortunately, it never really delivered on either of its promises to be sporty, because it really isn't that quick, with only 122 horsepower combined from its 1.5 litre Jazz-derived engine and a very small battery pack and motor. And it also didn't do very well in terms of economy. You'll get 40s to the gallon out of this if you're driving it carefully. And really, 10 years ago, what you do if you wanted an eco car was you simply went and bought a Golf Blue Motion and got an easy 60 to 70. So why is it that I've chosen now to revisit this car? Now, the interior is the first place where the CR-Z begins to claw back some credibility. Even 8 years ago upon release, as Hondas went, this was a very nice interior. As presented here in GT spec, this reasonably cramped cockpit gave you leather, a sunroof, nice dials. It was a cool space-age feeling car to be in. It did feel quite special, even if it didn't drive like it. Now, this officially is a 2+2, but in reality, it's more like either a 3-seater if you've got 2 short passengers, or you could simply use the fact that this back will fold down flat to give you a very spacious boot in a 2-seater. And that's really the configuration that I think I would most use this car in. But before we go on, let's get it out on the road and see how it drives and whether it's any different to what I remember. For a space age car, it has a relatively ordinary, but on a day like today, slightly toasty key. It also has that very infuriating combination of a key and a button. So one puts the foot down on the clutch and it starts really without any flair at all, because when it's warm, the car does not use the starter motor to start the engine. It uses its electric motor to get things started, because the electric motor is connected directly to the flywheel. Now I'm going to turn the fan down ever so slightly so that it doesn't blow, but I need to remain relatively cool. Now you have this very cool display that even 8 years on still looks pretty decent. The only thing really giving it away is the fact that the digital display down here is pretty low res, and you realise that there is no large sat-nav in here. It was an option on the cars. This is the GT model, so there are about 4 trims you could choose from, and this was nearly the top. The only real difference between this and the top model was a sat-nav. So we're going to head away. The gear shift is, of course, typical Honda perfect, and we pull away nicely and easily. Now, it was mentioned that engine is derived from the Jazz, so it does have VTEC, but it doesn't work in the way that you expect it to. It works actually in a fashion much closer to the new FK8 Type R, where it actually disengages the higher cam at higher RPM. And the reason for that being that the whole hybrid system doesn't play ball with VTEC in the traditional sense. Once you're in it, it actually feels like quite a large car, even though it isn't. Visibility is reasonably okay, apart from your rear left quarter, which only has a tiny little porthole. And the car is not quick at all. When the car came out, I think people were hoping that Honda would use the hybrid tech to plug that Achilles heel of their naturally aspirated VTEC motors. That is the relative lack of torque at low RPM. Didn't really do that. And there were plans for a supercharged or higher performance Mugen version. And if you Google CRZ, you'll still see press releases about that from a number of years ago. Unfortunately, those plans never came to fruition. The car really does need to be worked to get a move on. But unlike most Honda engines, doing so is not particularly pleasurable. It's amazing how long the bonnet and dash feel for such a small car. Styling wise, I really like this. They're a pretty unusual sight on the roads today, so whenever I do see one, I think they have actually aged really well. They stopped selling these a few years ago. Now, a few years into the model, they did have an upgrade, and they moved from the nickel metal hydride batteries used in this one to a more modern lithium-ion setup. Now, whenever you talk about hybrids, especially older used hybrids, people start to panic and talk about batteries and replacement and all this stuff and extortionate costs. Well, apparently the cost of replacing a battery pack in one of these is something along the lines of £1,000, so really not that expensive. Now, the last thing I bombed down here in was an Audi RS3, which is obviously night and day quicker. There's a small matter of nearly quadruple the horsepower will do that, but it also rode a lot firmer than this. This actually rides really pleasantly. And it has electric steering, which Honda have been working on for an awful lot longer than people think. Even the original NSX had electric steering, so when you see people talking about it like it's some sort of new thing, it isn't. Now, I actually got a reasonable amount of feel through the car when you're going in the dead ahead, and this gearbox is pleasant to use. The car turns in quite nicely. These sort of roads suit this quite well. There's a reasonable amount of body roll, but there's also a lot of comfort. I'm going to turn the car into sports mode, which just sharpens up the throttle a little bit, makes the display go red. Apparently this is one of the things that you really need to keep an eye on when you're buying one of these, that the sport mode and everything else engages as it should. It also weightens up the steering. Doesn't really add any more feel, but it's quite nice. I like the weight of it in sport mode. Now, looking at the trip computer down here, this has actually been averaging 51 to the gallon, which I'm quite impressed about. And it's got just shy of 76,000 miles on it, and it's worn those miles very, very well. The leather in here is in generally good condition, and the only part of the interior which really hasn't stood the test of time is the door handles and a little bit of the center console, which have then been wrapped to refresh them a little bit. And to be fair, I'm not going to criticise Honda for that, because I've gotten in plenty of other cars that cost a hell of a lot more money that suffered very much the same fate. Anybody that gets in and out of one of these on a regular basis and wears any form of jewellery, these things are going to happen. There's plenty in here. You've got cruise control, you've got aircon thankfully, and this sunroof here really does go a long way to making an actually quite cramped cockpit feel quite a bit larger. Actually a bit of nostalgia about this car really, because I enjoyed driving my father's car. Well, when you're 20 and being able to drive your dad's car is always quite a bit of fun, you know. And when this was brand new, it was a very special and different car and felt really, really cool. You know, it was a new car at the time, and to me the idea of getting in any brand new car and driving it was just amazing. So the CRZ holds a special place in my heart, and I'm glad to see that it's sort of held up now and still feels quite nice. Now, I said earlier that I think this car really deserves to be reappraised, and it's not often that I work out what I'm going to say before I drive a car. You can hear there that taking the car to its, by Honda standard, a lowly 6 and a bit thousand RPM red line, it's not especially overjoyed about the fact, so there's really no point in labouring it. Now, this car is currently for sale, And to give its owner, Scott, fair due, he asked me explicitly to not hold back, to say absolutely whatever I want about the car, whatever I felt, just say it. And the truth of the matter is that, as I started off by saying, if you want a car that's going to either deliver amazing performance or economy, look elsewhere. However, there is a person for whom I think this car is now ideal, and I don't think they bought it when it first came out. If you're 18 to 20 and you're looking for a sort of semi-sporty car, and you've maybe only been used to sort of small 1 litre type cars, I think you should consider this. Why? Well, first off, they look really cool. No, it's not going to have anywhere near the performance of your modern hot hatch. Certainly it's not going to be even remotely close to even a cooking Fiesta, let alone an ST. But they do look special, and they're very rare. And in a world where people all seem to be wanting the exact same thing, well, that's always a good thing. You'll know on the channel I always celebrate the underdog. I own a Lotus, come on. Now that has another benefit. Because the cars are relatively uncommon, they're going to be fairly cheap to insure. It is, after all, a hybrid eco-type Honda. Not particularly exciting. It's no Civic Type R as far as insurance companies are concerned, which is great because that means you can get cheaper insurance, which makes the car even more affordable. And the fact that it does do 40 to 50 to the gallon does make things a bit nice if you're trying to use this car to go to work and back and all that sort of stuff. Plus, this particular car is up for sale at $5,000. That's dirt cheap. Servicing isn't even expensive. Honda main dealers servicing isn't that expensive. It's only something like £180 for the last service on this. Parts are cheap, easy to get. Honda dealers are everywhere. So if you want to go to main dealers, you can. There are, of course, plenty of specialists. It makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. And it's a nice place to be. As I get older, I kind of start to value that more and more. I like my cars to be nice. I want to enjoy sitting in them. Sat in this, I feel like I'm actually in a much more expensive car than I am. I mean, when these came out, they were priced at just over £20,000, and at the time, I think people thought that was perhaps a little bit much, and I'm sure a large part of the price was for the fact that it was a little bit advanced, it was a little bit different. I'm pretty sure at the time, an FN2 Civic Type R was similar money, if not perhaps a little bit less. And so Honda did go all out in trying to make this feel like a more premium car. And it worked. So that's my take on the CRZ. Not a great performer, not a great eco car, but it's a different car and it is enjoyable to drive. Actually having a nice time in here. If you want to just go fast, I mean, forget it. It's not a car to do that in. There's lots more and you can get lots more for your money. I mean, for £5,000, go and buy an EP3. So there you go. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please comment below, hit the like button if you haven't already, and subscribe if you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Scott for bringing his car down. Bye-bye.